commit those actions.
No.
So it's such a fallacy. We are the government. And I think that started, I could be wrong, but I think that got popularized with Theodore Roosevelt, who is such a big government progressive. He was a Republican, but he ushered in a huge era of huge government and also imperialism. Like he was a big advocate for the Spanish-American War and then sending troops abroad. And I think he presided over, in a lot of ways, over the occupation of the Philippines. So it's hard to separate that, like that collectivist, we are the government, we're a force for good, force, like literally we're a force for good.
Yeah.
It's hard to separate that.
Yeah,
from,
can you be a force for good?
Right,
can
exactly.
you force someone into good? Is force itself even capable of being good?
Right.
The other on to individual when it fits their narrative, but then other times individuals who do bad things within government can say, oh, well, you know, I'm just doing my job.
Right.
Do you think that sort of approach just keeps everyone from shifting, like actually taking responsibility for themselves?
I think so, of course, because there's this like collective responsibility that we feel because we're raised this way. So I went to public school, and what did I learn? Well, there's this democracy. We got here after horrible other forms of rule, and like, agreed, those are all terrible forms of rule. Like monarchy, not cool. Divine right of kings, I don't think so. I don't think that there were individuals who were ordained by God to rule over us with violence. But it's sort of framed, and I think the people teaching this believe it. Like, I don't think they all think they're brainwashing us. I'm sure there are people out there like that, but there's this collective belief of like, well, democracy is where it's at, or even a republic. Voting is the highest realization of the individual. But of course, that's not true. And I've heard you talk about this of like, you can, a simple majority, 51 to 49, that's not representation.
And a lot of people in the freedom space are saying we need to fight for our democracy. And then
right.
I want you to touch on that. And then we'll get to the, well, we're a constitutional republic and why that's also a problem too. But touch on why democracy itself is inherently wrong.
Well, it comes back to that topic of violence.
Right.
Like, I don't think that you can have a peaceful, I don't love the word society. Like, I think that it's a charged word. Like, what is society? But often it's conflated with this democracy, with government. And you can't have a peaceful society when it's top-down violence. And that is the nature of the system. Even like, this is not like an opinion. This is true. Like, there is a belief in this society that there are certain people who have a moral right to inflict violence. Those are the law enforcers at any level. It's not just the police. It's like any law enforcement wing, the FBI, the military.
Right.
And they get this special exemption. And they're not better than any of us. They're mortal human beings. I know you've talked about this too.
They're men and women, just like us.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm borrowing this from, I heard it from Larkin Rose, but it's idea of like, do you have the right to kill or steal? No. Okay. What about two people? Like if they join a group, do they have the right? No. Okay. Do you have the right? Can you delegate a right that you don't have to somebody else, to another person who doesn't have that right? Like, this is all just ritual and like magical thinking. Like, there is no special process, but it's put up on this pedestal of like, it's this like supernatural power, like, well, authority. And this is something else from Larkin Rose. It's like, if you ask a police officer, like, well, why did you beat that person? It's like, well, it wasn't me. It's the law.
Right.
Authority
this is my point, right? Like, it absolves the individual of responsibility for their actions when they are acting on behalf of, quote, government.
Right.
And for the men and women who are not within positions in government, it also absolves them of responsibility for their own lives because they can turn to government for all of their problems. It is just perpetually absolving everyone of their individual responsibility for their own shit.
Right. And then the politician, what's the will of the people? Like, you hear a lot in the news, like, well, a majority of Americans want this. Okay, what about the rest of them?
Right.
Like, how much of a majority is this? And I love to come back to Lysander Spooner for this, who is a 19th century abolitionist, but like to the fullest extent. So he was an anarchist. He didn't believe in government. And he talks a lot in No Treason about like the people who wrote the Constitution. It was a very small group of people. Even like, let's assume they were well-intended and like they wanted everybody to be free, and they
trying to create limited government.
Right, exactly. Right. They thought they were doing the right thing, but did they go around and ask every person living at that time if they wanted to participate? No, it was a tiny little fraction of people back then who wanted this system, who consented to this system. And then you fast forward a couple hundred years, like no one consented. And people will say, well, you consented when you were born, but that to me, that's absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
Like like if you don't like it, you can leave. It's like, why should I leave? I didn't do anything. I didn't ask for this system. I was just told top down that that they own me. Basically, they have some claim to my life.